everybody's doing good. We are here today with a writer, a bass player, and musician here in Kansas City, Mark Montgomery.
Hi, Rob.
How you doing?
It's good to see you again.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I can't remember where I maybe would have met you. It had to have been at a jam, but
that's pretty likely.
Yeah,
I would guess.
Sure, yeah. But I know that that you'd been. I knew you before this, but then I saw that you'd been now playing with Brian a little bit,
Sure.
Brian Ruskin,
Yeah,
and that's really always fun to
that
watch.
That could
his
have been
band,
probably where we met too.
Probably,
one
yeah.
of his gigs. I'm
Yeah.
sure it probably was. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's great to always hear you with them because you're obviously a veteran and you know what's going on. And even though Brian's I have a heck of a time keeping up with Brian. I mean, he's just a monster. But you're a veteran and you keep with those guys easy. Like that's
Well,
that's
I've had
cool to
the
hear you play.
fortunate experience of being able to play with Brian, a lot in the last 10 or more years, and actually got to know his dad many years ago when I'd take my kids, who were both musicians at the time, down to Jardines, and Tommy would have my kids up, Patrick and Alex, on the bandstand with me. Usually he saved us to the last, and talked about the kids all the way because he really liked them, and they're good musicians. But that's kind of, I met Tommy and then met Brian after that, and Tommy was so good to us. He was just a beautiful guy and just extraordinary drummer, musician, percussionist, just amazing.
Yeah, he was extremely well respected in town. I heard his name all over the place.
Yeah. You never had a chance to.
I saw him. I saw him at with Brahm at Majestic. Yeah, a bunch of times. But I've never met him and talked to him. But
which is
never got a chance.
Anyway, Brahm. Anyway,
Brahm, yeah. But so I know a little bit about you now, but I don't know what happened before, like how you got started playing, and a little bit about your career. Like share that with us.
Well, the spaceship flew by at a very high rate of speed, and they squirted something out the side that landed in the ocean, and here I was. No, I'm not kidding. I started playing music about the time I got married, which was in about 1987, 1986, 87. I was just getting into playing bass, and I'd played bass in high school in the stage shows, and played tuba. They had too many trumpet players, and so I switched over to sousaphone and tuba for the marching band and all that, and I just kind of got stuck on the bottom end and loved it, and so learned how to play electric bass, and I had a solo on the Woodchopper's Ball in the Kemper Arena one time at one of the basketball games when they featured our little high school pep band. So, I played probably for more people there at that event than I have ever played for since.
Yeah, that's funny.
But I just kind of thought of that. But my dad bought me a guitar when I was 16, and we always had a piano around the house. We're a musical family. My older brother is a very accomplished pianist, and as well as playing accordion, and he's learned the bondonion, so he can play the Astor Piazzolla kind of music, and they've done a lot of that. And so I took some piano lessons from him when I was a kid, and got a drum set for a brief period of time, but I ended up on trumpet, and then took lessons from Tony Swisher. Do you know Tony? Well, I think hi Tony, he's still around town here somewhere. I haven't seen him in a long time, but I got some music lessons when I was a kid, and then was always in school bands from that point forward. So that's kind of where it started.
Sure.
And of course, because we always had a piano around the house, everybody was going in and fooling around with it. So, in my opinion, piano is the reason why anybody can figure out any other instrument, because they can look at the piano and see all the notes, all their relations to each other, where they repeat, and you can look at chords. When I'm thinking chords on a guitar or something, I'm looking at the piano keyboard, thinking that needs to be a 7 or a minor 7
sharp,
or something.
whatever.
Yeah. And so, it's proven that children who take piano lessons are better at math. So we started both our kids on piano, and then they moved on to other instruments, saxophone.
It's so visual, isn't it?
Well,
On piano,
yeah,
you know,
for
you
me,
can
it's
just
just-
see everything. Yeah.
They couldn't have designed something to write and compose music on more brilliantly, and it was hundreds of years ago, and it hasn't changed in all that time. So anyway, but yeah, I came from a musical family, off on a tangent about piano, but so I kind of learned music and learned how to read as a younger person, and I'm not that great a reader now. Sight reading stuff for me is kind of clumsy, but I can read charts and play bass. I started a band. Me and another fellow named Steve Andrews started a band called the Main Street Rhythm Devils, and our drummer was Freddie Holmes. And Freddie was a black man. He was from Kansas City, Kansas. He was a veteran of the Korean War. Freddie was an old guy, and we were just these two young, punky white kids that wanted to play blues, it was just the end of the blues. Well, Freddie just took us under his wing and just adopted us and just had so much fun. He was just such a beautiful human being. He was funny. Anytime on break time we had, you would see Freddie talking to people, and they're over there just laughing, like he was just a very sweet man. But he taught us how to play the shuffle. And Freddie could play a jackrabbit shuffle that I've maybe only heard one or two drummers since then that can actually play it like that. It's just such a feather touch and so fast that I can't even do it with my tongue.
Right, yeah.
He had this shuffle beat, and he would just, I just call it, he shoved the shuffle up our asses. And we had to play it fast. We had to be able to play it. And so we worked in that band for 2 or 3 years, maybe. Played the Hilltop West Bar and Grill, which turned into the Coda a few years ago. It's now closed, but that was a little neighborhood joint, and it was on a full moon. You're guaranteed there was going to be a fight, so you had to kind of keep your eyes up and watch the crowd.
That's
they're
funny.
dancing in case some guy gets jealous and comes out, swings at somebody on the dance floor, knocks over your mic stand, and breaks your teeth out. So it was that kind of gig. We played the Bigger Jigger on East Bellefontaine and 12th Street. Had Wednesday nights there, and we had weekend stuff at the other club, and a lot of other places like that. We got to play the Spirit Fest when it was downtown. Lindsay Shannon booked us into that. First couple of years we were playing, so that was a big deal. Bonnie Raitt played that stage later the afternoon. So I've just been thrust into this really beautiful life in Kansas City musically because there's so much music around, and you can't hardly swing a dead cat around your head without running into a musician or somebody's a promoter or whatever. So anyway, from that I formed the Mo City Jumpers with Jim Beisman, Mark Kaplan on drums, and Mark Kaplan worked with Greg Mize, and he worked with all the B3 organ players as the drummer, and he used to work at a jam over on Sunday nights, somewhere in Independence, and I've forgotten the name of the place, but he told me that Jay McShann would come in there on Sunday nights after he was done with his gigs and play with them, and he called Mark Goodwood. He said, "Hey, Goodwood," and so, and Mark could play any kind of a drum beat. We focused on groove music. It was our thing. It was a piano trio with tenor saxist Dana Smith, and I don't know if you've ever heard Dana play or met him. He's kind of retired, but Dana, the first time we met him was at the Hilltop, and he just came and sat in with the band one night. I was so drunk, man. And it's like, dude, you can play. I mean, when we first heard him play, it was like, wow. So Main Street Rhythm Devils then morphed into Mo City Jumpers, and then Steve left the band, and then it was just piano trio with Dana on the tenor horns. So we were doing all kinds of Horace Silver, and just all the jazz standards that people normally meet. And Jim, as a piano player, was able to teach me all that stuff, and I learned by the seat of my pants just playing behind him so much of the jazz that I've done over the years. And so and then Dana quit the band at some point, and then we went to trio, and we needed another soloist, and so instead of hiring somebody, I just started playing harmonica on a rack, and the stand-up bass, which was, you know, kind of a chore to learn how to do, because
It's a little different.
all this has to be going by itself. You can't even think about it, you know, when you're playing another instrument on top of it.
Wow.
You know, and so we did that for a few years. Gosh, and then I started jam sessions, jazz jam down at the 12 Baltimore Club, or it was, you know, bar. There might be called something else now, but we had a jazz jam there for a few months that lasted. And then a few months later, I was still getting calls from people. Hey, man, I went down to your jam. Where were you? And it's like, well, they pulled the plug on it, you know. But such is the way things go. But Main Street or Mo City Jumpers played at the Phoenix on a regular basis. We were there, you know, monthly on one of the weekend nights, and just, you know, we were in our heyday musically then. 10 years before anybody else in Kansas City got to that point with that style of music, you know. We were playing Jimmy Smith tunes and the band out of New Orleans that does Sissy Strut. The Meters. Meters and the Funky. We're just doing all kinds of really cool, obscure-ish kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's cool.
We even covered Compared to What? You know, and I sang that one, and that's just a whole piece of music right there. It's a chart, you know. But we covered that song. We covered some Tom Waits stuff, and just anything that we wanted to do, we had the musical ability to pull it off. We did it, you know. And so that was just a tremendous. That was, you know, in my, you know, 30s, 40s, and you know, that's where I really kind of felt comfortable, was playing jazz bass. We also played like Backdoor Man, you know, by Willie Dixon, which is, you know, a blues song. So we played a bunch of blues. We played all this cool swinging organ groove music, which Mark Kaplan was adapted to playing on the drums, and I could play next to Mark all night long. And I would walk out of the gig. I was right next to his right cymbal, and I don't think there were 3 times in the 10 or 15 years we played together that my ears were ringing. Because he could lay down a hard, heavy groove without all the volume that normally happens.
Yeah.
So from there, after 2001, the music business really took a deep hit when that happened, when the bombings happened, the planes crashing into the towers. And I started about that time. I saw John Hammond Jr. play the guitar and the harmonica on a rack, and I was like, "Holy shit! Here's a white guy that has all kinds of soul, and he's doing it." I mean, and so I had kind of started on harmonica, played a little in the bands and stuff, but when I saw that guy playing that solo act with the harmonica, just slaying it on the harmonica, just like so soulful and so into it. That's what got me into doing the solo stuff, because first of all, I didn't have to take the band along to make better money. So the solo gigs were paying more. I could ask more for them, and they were paying them because I could lay down a dance groove with that, you know, using a little foot stomp and you know, guitar and harmonica, and so I kind of did that for a few years while playing with other little jazz bands and stuff, you know, filling in. Brian Ruskin, I was doing a few gigs with him here and there, and then Mo City Jumpers kind of fell out, you know, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, and then I started playing with Brian, probably at about the same time, playing electric bass behind Brian, and sometimes acoustic bass, but that's kind of the last few years I've been doing that.
Yeah.
You know, and Brian uses a lot of different bass players, but I was really fortunate to hit that groove at the Phoenix with him, which is my home. The Phoenix Bar, I've been going, you know, I've been there since like the late 90s.
Yeah, wow.
Playing almost the whole time. Right now I don't have any current gigs there, but you know, last Friday night I went down and sat in with Amanda Fish, and you know, so it's the Phoenix has been instrumental in my development as a musician, because I've worked there from almost all the years I've played there.
That's cool, man.
And they don't hire bad bands. Every other band that plays down there.
pretty good.
They get a crowd in because they do the work of keeping good bands in there. Everybody knows they can go in there any time, take their friends in and hear somebody good, not just the neighborhood people that work at Hallmark and they've got their band together and they work for cheap or for
So you said a couple interesting things there. That one thing that I've been really interested in and trying to figure out in my head, and this is kind of more of a life lesson as well, is that me as a young musician, I keep hearing all of these stories about, even in the 90s, I talked to a couple friends of mine and they're like, dude, our band was terrible and we were playing 5 nights a week. You know, and I keep hearing stories like that, and especially obviously 70s, 40s, you know, I mean, I hear, you know, throughout history, everybody's been playing. And so my new thing in life is not that I always do this, but I'm trying to take a little bit more like personal responsibility for myself. And so, for example, when I'm going out and like looking for gigs, I'm always stuck between this two-pronged thing where I don't want the problem to be other people and the club owners and the scene, and I want it to be that I'm not working hard enough, you know, to go find gigs and get stuff. But then I also have this other thing that is true, that like you just said, it kind of took a hit in 2001, and people aren't coming out near as much as like the 70s and then the 90s and stuff. So I'm always, you know, grappling between this two things of how do I emotionally feel about this when, as a younger musician, or when things aren't happening as fast as I want. I want to take responsibility, but there's also this thing going on that, you know, there's a lot of people, especially, you know, compared to the 40s, where a lot of people just don't care about like jazz, for example, anymore as much as they did. And example, you know, things like that, or live music that people are just going on the internet.
There are so many other things that people can do with their time now. The television just sucked the life out.
And internet is huge right
now.
Well,
and the internet has sucked the life out of the music business to an extent, but the internet is also a place where you can promote music. So it's a double-edged sword. I mean, and we definitely in 2001 took a big hit because everybody was in a foul, sour mood after that, and people had a hard time going out and having a good time. And, you know, then the DUI things were coming up. The DUI laws, they started really getting tough on that, and people started staying home about that same time period. And it was a tough, you know, through the 2000s, that was a tough time to be in music. And so,
taking smoking out of the bars too. You know, there's been a whole bunch of little things that I don't know if that had as much effect as the DUI thing, but
no, it didn't, because after people got over being sour about the bar and being not smoking, then they'd come back and just go outside and smoke, and it caused them to smoke less. It was good for everybody.
But
you know?
But yeah, so I'm trying to, you know, accept the fact that as a young musician, I'm trying to get into a time when it is not, you know, when there isn't 18,000 bars in even a Kansas City, you know, so I'm trying to have this good, healthy perspective. And I think you mentioned something about perspective maybe before we started, but the other thing is that a lot of times I hear a lot of kind of complainers in that sense, you know, about like, the public just doesn't understand, you know, public doesn't understand what our band is trying to do, and the bar owner's this, and the da-da-da-da, you know, and even in Wichita, you know, I was like, man, this is pitiful down here, you know, there's nothing going on, but as soon as I came to Kansas City, and there's like 15 jams a week, and there's actually people who care about, I was like kid in a candy store. And so, you know, but then I hear some people leave, and they're like, oh man, those, you know, Kansas City's stuck in its place, and da-da-da-da-da, and so I'm trying to have a really good, and that's one of the reasons why I want to do the show, is to hear some more perspective on what is going on here. But do you find the complaining, you know, I heard Phil Wakefield said one time, and this is not his quote, but he's like, you want to hear a musician complain, give him a gig. And that's a great, funny. You know, it's a great line. Phil. Yeah, I know. But what do you think about that, of like musicians kind of bitching all the time? What do you think about that?
Here's my thing on playing music is like, I think Lonnie Ray may have told me this. I can't remember who quoted it to me, but only 3 or 4% of musicians actually get to stand on a stage and play for people. And so, you should feel very gifted that you have this opportunity wherever you are. If you're playing in a bar band somewhere or on a stage somewhere at a festival or whatever, you are one of the few that is gifted enough and hardworking, driven enough to learn your instrument, learn your trade, create a craft of it, and make music and make some money from it. After 2001, I just it just pretty much wasn't about the money after that. And I think what's happened.
I mean, for you or the scene?
For anybody.
For everybody, yeah.
For everybody. It was something, Max Groove had at that very time, he had a CD release party in LA. He had 3 or 4 songs on the jazz charts out there, and his CD release party was September 12th.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
and he told me it
totally
just destroyed his career for years. He just, my friends Max, Barry, Denny Osborne, and he were playing the little Fairway Grill, and he said they used to just regularly make people come up and drop hundreds in the jar. And after that happened, it just there were nights when they didn't get any tips.
Right.
Well, it was a psychological condition of the country. But back to the 3 or 4%, we're lucky to be playing. We're lucky that somebody's willing to pay us anything to play. But on the other hand, musicians, when I started playing, I made $50 a gig, and I felt like that was pretty good money back then. And if you convert that with inflation to today's terms, it's like $242.
Yeah.
So you could buy back then I remember when my kids were little, I'd buy a cart full of groceries and complain because it was $50. But I could make that in a night playing a gig.
Yeah.
And so, we eventually started making more money, but at 2001, man, it just kind of put the ceiling on what everybody gets paid.
Yeah.
And it's still there.
Yeah.
We're still in the dark ages as far as what we get paid for music. And lately, I give my go-away price, and if they don't go away, then we're both happy. I think you can devalue yourself by playing for less. You can devalue yourself by asking for less because you're only perceived as worth that much to yourself. How can you be worth much more than that to me? And so often you can chase people away by underpricing yourself.
Yeah.
So there's a fine balance between what kind of money you can make, but you have to love doing it. For me, I just couldn't imagine not going to my musical therapy sessions, which I get paid for. I'm lucky.
Right, yeah.
But on the other hand, it's a hard way to make a living. The bands that are out there traveling and touring are not doing it because they make money. They are, very few of them until you get into until you're into a big Prevost bus.
Sure.
You're not making any money.
It's a venture to them. It's
it's you want to share your creativity, your music, your talent, your love with people, and music is love. So I just feel so fortunate that I've had the career I've had, because I've been able to share my stuff. And in the last few years, I've started writing, and that's when I crawled out from under a rock. I played music in Kansas City for over 20 years, and nobody knew who I was. I'd go play gigs subbing jazz bass for some gig, and people would get to know me a little bit, but I was nowhere. It wasn't even on the radar in Kansas City. Still, I started songwriting and producing with Max Berry. And then I had a product that I could take down to KKFI, and they put it on the radio, and I could send it to other radio stations. And people started learning of me through KKFI a lot, and this was even before the internet. And so when Facebook came out, it was an immediate way that I could project myself out there and let people know who I am. That has been tremendously helpful to me because I've gotten to know a lot of people on Facebook before I met them in person as people, and know who they are, and know who you want to kind of come up and introduce yourself to and who not to, and know who's going to come to the gig and who isn't.
Right.
So,
Facebook people are people?
No, they're not
Facebook
really.
people are not people.
And I'll just say something to that point, and that is that I can post a gig. I play every other Tuesday at Jazz and Billy Ebling plays the other Tuesdays. We've been doing this for a while, and I Facebook post this stuff every day, every time, 24 hours in advance, and 90 people like it. Nobody shows up to the gig. So there's a big difference in promoting yourself that way. But I did notice that if I was reading something about if you want to go out on the road, you need to be able to sell out shows in your own hometown. And if you can do that, pack bars in your own hometown, then you have a pretty good chance of being able to do that on the road. And I was thinking to myself, I'm not going to make it. So, but my last CD that I just came out with, the Difficult Man CD, we had the CD release party at Frank's, and this is the first show I've ever done in my life that I had to sell tickets for. And I spent 2 weeks really working hard at it. I went on radio interviews on KKFI. Chuck Haddix had me on the night before my show, which was a Sunday afternoon. Frank got us in on a Sunday afternoon down there, and we sold out and had to move into the bigger room. At the last minute, the sound guy, we're already set up in the Carl Butler Lounge, and he moved us out to the other stage. I'm like, why? He goes, I don't know. Frank just told me to. So, but I sold more tickets than I ever imagined.
Yeah, that's
for
awesome,
that one
man.
show, and it wasn't that hard. You have to be a pro. You have to, I don't know. I learned a lesson there though, that I can sell out shows in my own hometown.
Yeah, that's cool, man.
And that, and since then I've had some other shows that were successful because I was promoting them, really successfully promoting them. And I'm not a promoter. I don't like to do it.
Yeah.
It's a pain in the neck. So I just want to go play music.
I know.
And there's so much more to it than that.
Right.
So you learn after a while. If you want to run it like a business, you got to do everything. You got to wear all the hats. You got to be the promoter. You've got to be the record salesperson. You've got to be the distributor. You've got it's. How am I going to do all that?
So two things you said there that was interesting. So again, I'm trying to roll this in my head about, is it, is there more I could be doing myself, or is it just is it just the scene and the owners and the society and whatever? But you said something interesting about the 4% thing of who's playing.
Yeah.
I heard this interesting thing the other day, and it's something called like the Mathieu Principle, and it's from the Bible, but it's the basic idea is that there's like this sort of formula in all things that like 1% of the, or it's like 1% of the arena will be getting 50% of the stuff. So, and he said this works with everything. Like, so for example, 1% of the YouTube channels get at least 50% of the viewers. 1% of the recording artists end up getting 50% of the album sales. 1% of the, and it goes through all of these.
The 1%ers have it.
1%ers have 50% of the money, right?
Yeah.
And he was making an argument that this is a thing. There's a quote that I can't remember from the Old Testament, but that's what the Matthew thing. But so that's another argument against it's all only my personal responsibility, is that you're kind of, there is this thing that you are fighting against, and don't be, maybe the lesson there is obviously sometimes a hell of a lot more that people could be doing, like you were talking about the advertising that some bands just don't want to do, but maybe you need to go do it. But there is this thing out there that you don't have any really control over, and you can only put out your huge Facebook posts, and if people don't show up, you've done as much as you can, so I don't know what the moral is there, but maybe
it
it's
depends
both,
on how far you want to go with it. And here's the thing, Rob. I think that it's the musician's job to provide good music. It is the club owner's job to provide an audience. And the way they can provide an audience, any club, is by putting in consistently good music. You don't know what that club has on tonight. All you know is that every time you've been there, you've seen a great band, your friend's coming in from somewhere, you're picking them up at the airport, you want to take them to see some live music, you take them to that bar because you know there's going to be some kind of good band there. You don't know who it's going to be. But so a good club, Frank's place, the Phoenix. There's several clubs that
Green Lady, BB's,
Green Lady, BB's.
They're
all of these places in Kansas
Majestic
City.
Always
if
has
you are
great
fortunate
music,
enough to play one of these places, you know there will be an audience there for you. So just do your best work. Go out and play the show. Do your practice. Do your homework. Do your thing. And when you find clubs like that you can play that way, that have their own audience and they don't put anything on you if nobody shows up, or they still pay you the same. Here's another thing. Kansas City is a place where you can get paid whether a crowd shows up or not in most places, which is so unusual. I mean, compared to anywhere else in the U.S.
It's still kind of the Wild West here a little bit. You can walk in and get a $100 gig for yourself, and it's a thing. You know? I mean, you don't have to buy, you don't have to sell tickets like freaking Austin, right?
Go to somewhere in West Virginia and try to get $100 for a gig, and they'll laugh at you because they've got a bunch of local guys that'll play for $50, and that's all they're going to pay. Right. You know, so but anyway, my point is that one of the clubs shall remain nameless, and I said something about the Hallmark people earlier. There was this band from Hallmark that was a bunch of Hallmark employees, and they would come in and play for free, and they'd bring 40 people with them, and they drank like fish, and it was a big night for the club owner whenever these guys played.
Of course it was.
After a few times of playing, they started scaring people away because they weren't that good. And they played for free, and that was the bait that the club owner could have said, now I want to pay you guys something, you know. But they didn't care about the money. But he did, you know, he liked the money that he came in at that time, but it damaged his reputation to the point where nobody was sure if that band was playing Saturday, we don't want to go. So that's that's up to the club owners. And the club owners that put it on you, why aren't you filling this place up? Boo-hoo. For me, I'm just kind of like, you know, dude, get yourself some good bands. That will bring some audience in, and then the other people that are in the bar like them, they start telling their friends. It's a matter of a consistent long-term. With music, you can't just start something that's going to be an overnight success. And I've heard the quote that if you want to make $1 million in the music business, you start with $3 million. But a lot of the club owners, when they first get started, I've seen it many times, they're going to do this right, and they're going to, you know, and then 6 months later they're out of money and they have to start pulling the plugs on things, and it just
going to trivia night.
Half the bars that open up don't last a year. Restaurants same way maybe.
There's the 1% is 50% of, you know.
So I mean, I feel like it's the responsibility of the club to put good bands, and Kansas City's full of great musicians. This place is just
you should not have a problem finding musicians. Wichita might be different, but Kansas City is not that way. You know?
There's good musicians everywhere in the country, and they're coming out like out of the woodwork now. In this day and age, because music is important in this day and age. But in Kansas City, I've just watched it, you know, pretty much most of my life. I started playing when I was in my late 20s, and I've watched it all along develop into what it is now. I would have never dreamed it would be like this. It is just an amazing place to see music. And you can walk into most clubs without a $5 cover charge. And the ones you do have, you go to a bar and they ask you for $5 at the door, and you walk in there and get to see that band. It's just amazing. It's just simply amazing. We don't get this kind of music elsewhere in the country. You can go to Nashville and pay $10 a cover to get in and see a good band for an hour or two, and then they change it out, and you know, like you've got a show. But New York, you have to pay. I don't know what to see a show there, but it's not any $5 cover charge. You can't just walk in and find a place and they'll bring you beer. You know, it's
flip 20s in New York. That's all you do is flip 20. You know.
So I mean, our music scene, the bar scene, has just blown up in the last few years. The Crossroads, when they started gentrifying and developing, that just brought life back to downtown. All the apartment buildings in downtown are full of people.
Downtown's doing better.
Downtown's the streets. There are people. When I was working at 12th in Baltimore, my friends from Johnson County were afraid to come down there because they might get hustled by a homeless person. And it was like, just have $1 in your hand when you get out of your car. That's all the guy wants. He needs $1. Give him $1. You know, I mean, he'll be your best friend. You know,
so just get out of your car with $1 in your hand. That's
you know, good grief. You know, you're worried about the guys. Just when they ask you for money, just hand them some, and you go in the bar. Don't even worry about it, because that guy, if he saw somebody screwing with your car after you tipped him, he's gonna go over and give him hell. You know, I say, you know, don't be afraid. Yeah. And so. But for years, it was desolate streets down there. Yeah. So you had to park a block away. There was nobody around. Somebody could thump you in the head. So, you know, they had maybe some legitimate fears. But the bottom line is now it looks like downtown Atlanta. Yeah. It looks like somewhere that's Chicago. Or, you know, I mean, it's starting to be that. And I'm really happy about it.
So the other thing that I wanted to ask you a little bit about, that was a little more big picture stuff, but kind of the smaller picture with different musicians in town. One thing that was frustrating me is, and again, I didn't really coin this phrase, but I came up with this phrase that this is really what I mean, is that I'm getting frustrated with musician cluelessness. And an example of when people are turning their amps up to 7 and they don't really realize it, or we talked about earlier, you know, playing over other musicians, you know, when not really understanding that it's not your solo dude, you know, there's a singer singing right now, you know, that kind of stuff. I'm frustrated about that, and that was one of the reasons why I wanted to do the show, is to have some conversations about that and get other people's perspective. And maybe, you know, the counter argument to that is I'm just a not a nutcase, which I'm just like too intense with this, and I'm not loving music, man, dude. Man, you know, it's love, express yourself, you know, that kind of. Yeah. But for me, I get frustrated because I want music to be played really well, because that's what inspires me. I don't know if crappy music inspires other people. I would doubt it. You know, and so like that's
some
my
crappy music in bars, and people are having a great time.
I know,
it's like,
and so
they've never heard Kansas City music yet.
Yeah,
like they haven't heard what you're
So with the specific, I think one time I was talking to you about that maybe in Jam magazine or somewhere that you put like 10 open jam rules, or you did like a thing. I don't know if you ended up doing that.
Etiquette.
Yeah, jam etiquette or player etiquette or whatever. Can you just not even about your article, but just can you discuss a little bit of that, about etiquette when you're playing on stage or whatever?
Well, Kansas City is a jam session town, unlike any other that, you know, like you can go to Nashville, you can go to Memphis. People don't let you sit in. It's not a common thing. The bands have worked really hard to get their stuff together, and they have to focus on it. And when they have another player coming in, it's like a whole different thing. And in Kansas City, there's a big jazz community. And so, like Brian Ruskin, for instance, when people come in that he knows,
I've sat in with him.
Yeah, like you, Rob. I mean, we're very gracious. I mean, and I say we, meaning the whole community in Kansas City, the jazz community in Kansas City is usually very gracious about getting their friends to come sit in. It's viewed as a gift by this person to come in and sit in. So, you know, it's an honor to be asked to do that. Kansas City is also the home to a jam session of some sort in town, whether it's rock, blues, jazz, anything, every night of the week. And that doesn't happen.
Really neat.
As far as I know, that doesn't happen anywhere else in the universe. I mean, there's lots of live music in Austin and other places, but Scott Moyer, I think, just moved to Omaha, so they don't have a jam up there. So he started a bar, you know, a jam in a bar on Thursday night, and he said people are just starting to come in like crazy because it's like, oh, it's never happened in Omaha. Well, Omaha's only 150 miles away, and they don't have a jam yet. So Kansas City's been doing this for a long time, and the godfather of music in Kansas City, in my opinion, blues music, is Lonnie Ray. Lonnie Ray was the first person that I ever got up and sat in with on the harmonica. He let me up, and he made me feel like $1 million when I walked down. And I just went up there and played a little bit of harp, and I wasn't that good. It was the first time I'd ever played, but he encouraged me. And Lonnie Ray, I've seen him for years, encouraging other musicians, getting them up, showing them a good time. And you know, like when a musical train wreck happens at a jam session, nobody gets hurt. There's no reason to get your feelings hurt. It's just like, yeah, well, the ending didn't work out so well. Let's laugh about it and move on. You know, and that's happened to me down at Knuckleheads. Even just like in the last couple of years, I was up there and I'm used to having the bass in my hand when I'm singing a song. So I'm up there singing in front of this band, and there's another bass player. And when the song came up to the ending, I was just like, oh, who's got it? Who's got it? Who's got it? And nobody had it. And the song just fell apart. And we all had a big laugh about it. And it was great, you know, because nobody gets hurt in a musical train wreck. But the jam session comes with its own set of problems. And one of them is that there's one person usually responsible for managing the stage, getting the musicians on and off. They all have their different ways of doing this. Sometimes the guys will get 5 guys up there and let them sing or play for half an hour, or sometimes they'll just have a person up. I kind of favor the idea of having one person up for 2 or 3 songs, getting them down. You know, like maybe this person's up for 2 songs, and maybe at the next 2 songs go by, change out somebody else, and just kind of keep it moving around that way. That's the way I like it, because if you put a band on the stage for a half an hour, and they're all the same guys, and they were here last week, you're going to hear the same set you heard last week. And so, you know, that's kind of one of my little things about jam sessions. If it's really run properly, it never gets monotonous or old. I mean, or, you know, usually not. I mean, but, so there's managing all this one guy, or this one person. And then you've got all these musicians that are maybe not in a band, and they don't get to jam that often, and they've been looking forward to this all week, and they get up there, and they have to wait, and they're getting pissy, and you know, and you know, making it difficult for the guy running the show. Maybe the guy running the show doesn't particularly like this person that much, and they're putting him on ice for a while. Who knows?
On purpose.
The bottom line, this problem exists too. So, I guess. I mean, for me, in that whole situation, is just don't take things personally. When you're at a gig or at a jam and you're on the sign-up list, and it gets down to the end of the day, they've had a busy day and you don't get to get up, don't take it personally. It's not, you know, like, it's a privilege to play on stage, especially if you don't have your own band and you don't get to do it that often. You want to come into a jam, don't try to run the show. Be a part of it. Be a bee in the hive.
Not a right.
Well,
a little bit of more of a privilege to get to play, and it's
it
not.
Is a
you
privilege.
Know,
it is.
I agree.
Indeed, a privilege. And I've seen temperamental people stomp out because they didn't get to play, or they didn't get to play with who they wanted to, or you know, they have the temper fits, and you know, that just goes along with the rest of life. They're employees like that. They're bosses like that. You know, there's people like that. But in the music situation, music should be fun. And if it isn't fun, who's going to want to do it? If it wasn't fun, none of us would do it, Rob. If this was just a grind job to you, for what it pays, you wouldn't do it. So it's important that people have fun. And the other thing about having fun on stage is that if you're not having fun, the people watching you are not having fun. They see the tension, they can feel it, they can feel the energy, and it has to be fun. So at jam sessions, it's important to just keep it fun. Do stuff that you like. And then the other thing is there is usually a kind of procedure. You either have a sign-up list, a set list, a sign-up list, and you go up and introduce yourself to the band, let them know who you are and what you play if you don't know them. You know, I'm a harmonica player. This is me, Mike. I'm right here, and you know, they get to visit with this person and try to figure out who to fit them with in the jam session. I mean, this is hard work. To run a jam session, I've done it before. It's a pain in the ass. I'm sorry, folks, but if you're going to a jam, if you don't treat the person running it with respect, you don't deserve to get up on stage. And I mean, that's even when things don't go your way, you know, because they don't sometimes. And never go into a gig of somebody else's band and take your gear in with you.
And expect to play.
When you walk in with your guitar, everybody in the audience go, oh, he's going to play with the band. And the band's like, you know, like that puts the band in an uncomfortable position because you haven't talked to them about it. Talk to them about it first. When you go to the jam host and you sign up, talk to them. Ask them what they want from you. Where would you like to put me, instead of saying, you know, I want to be with this guy and this guy and this guy. It's like, where would you like to put me wherever, you know, and just be easy about it, because it should be fun. And if you make it not fun for other people, you're just robbing everyone of the whole experience.
Yeah. So that's where, I hear all of that, and I'm struggling with, and not even the jams part, but just playing with other musicians. I'm trying to, again, find this kind of balance thing, because I get, and I can't think of the right word for this, but I get pretty stuffy as a musician. You know, and this is the problem with this is the college that I went through, you know, because they, you know, that, well, you know, that is actually a D7 sharp, you know, that kind of mentality of high level of excellence kind of a thing is my problem. It's not that I do it all the time, but I want that. And my problem is that if the goal is fun, every single person knows what happens. Like, for example, when you get up in a band or at a jam with a kind of a whole bunch of jammers that kind of stumbled out of their garage.
Right.
And then you get up with like Dave Hayes' house band, you know, and then you're like, so which is more fun? You know? That's my philosophical argument against the fun thing.
Should we be teaching people at jam sessions, us professional musicians, should we be put on stage with a bunch of people that don't know how to play? Quite frankly, that aggravates the shit out of me.
Right.
And it's happened before. I got stuck with a bad drummer one day down at Knuckleheads, and I don't even remember his name, but this guy just sped everything up. I get the song started, I counted it off, and then he took off, and I'm trying to sing it, and I had to stop the second song that he did this to. I had to stop him, and I've never stopped a band before. I have never done that.
Yeah.
Until
you just
probably
had to,
about,
you know,
I just know, dude, I cannot sing my song that I wrote at that tempo. And I counted it off real slow for him again, and he played slow for a couple of minutes, and then he was back up to it. Right. And it's just like, and I had to stop myself from saying anything to him on the way out, because it's not my job to teach him. I have to, I mean, and I should have said something kind to him about it, but, you know, like, I don't.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not here to teach everybody. Right. I just want to play and have fun, and I tried to have fun anyway, and I didn't want to make a scene. You know, like so. But there is that's kind of jam etiquette. You know, getting into the bar, signing up, talk to the people, find out what they want from you, not try to demand what you want from them. Just say, you know, where can you fit me in, or anywhere you can fit me in is fine. You know, just make it easy on them.
Whenever you want to get me up or
make
not,
it easy
or whatever.
Do you want to get in there and play again next week? Make it easy on them this week. You know, so that's one thing. Respect the jam master. Secondly, communicate. When musicians get on stage and they put their head down and they play the guitar like this, they're not keeping their eyes up. So when you're at a jam session and you're a guest musician or you're one of the people that's sitting in, keep your eyes up. Look at everybody. Watch everybody. Look for cues. Listen for cues. Read the music. You know, as a bass player or drummer, when you sense something coming up that you need to take control of it. You know. But basically, there's a lot of community, especially towards the end of a song. Solos, for instance, you know, watch the lead singer. If you're taking a solo, keep your eyes on him, because when he steps back up to that mic to sing the next song, you want to be done with your solo. You want to wind your solo down before, so he knows that's when he's coming in. So there's a lot of things about reading other musicians and reading. You know, standard form is to take, you know, a couple of 12-bar rides in a solo. 2 is kind of the standard. Man, if you're really getting into it, the crowd's starting to hip up and everybody's kind of, you know, cheering you on, then go ahead and take a 3rd ride through and just, you know, give the crescendo. But so many players that I've seen, and not very many, but the guys will be taking their solo and they'll just pay no attention to where the end of it is coming up, and they'll turn around.
Yeah.
Is this the end right here? And they haven't.
Yeah.
They haven't.
And that's the cluelessness that I was talking about. That I get frustrated with.
You call it foolishness. It's just inexperience, right?
Cluelessness, not foolishness.
Okay.
Being clueless about the etiquette.
Well, it's not your job to teach people, but you shouldn't take it personally.
Yeah.
And I mean, just always do your best work, because it doesn't matter what they do. And I learned that by playing with a really bad band and a really great sax player that was in the band. And I was like thinking about quitting the band, and I had these double bookings coming up, and I was like, he had just come back from New York, and this is the raunchiest little husband-wife trio band, and we're playing little joints in Lenexa, and just like whatever, but it paid.
Yeah.
It was a paying gig. And when I asked this gentleman about it, who shall remain nameless, he said, man, gig's a gig. I asked him how he felt about playing with these two hacks that, like he's a pro that just got back from New York, and he's been up there playing saxophone, and he's just like, man, gig's a gig. Show up, you play. And he played awesome over the top of these people that just could barely play their way out of a wet paper bag. And so I just learned a lesson at that point. It's like a gig is a gig. Go in, do your best work, doesn't matter where you are. And another thing about that is that you never know who's going to be in the audience.
Yeah.
Your next savior, your next lucky break could be sitting out there in a chair by himself. He's the only person in the bar, and he's a record executive, or he's a promotional guy, or some.
Or he owns another bar, or whatever.
He wants to hire you for a house party next week, or next month. Never assume that the audience is not listening. If there's one person in there, play your show. Do your show. Like there's a whole room full of people. Just close your eyes and picture there's 100 people sitting out there in their underwear, and you're playing your show. Exactly. But
and so that's something that I will myself keep thinking about, because me being basically a self-proclaimed music snob, I get up there and I want to. It's not about the certain songs necessarily, but I like playing quality stuff, and I like being up with quality people, obviously, and so I'm really, especially when I'm playing in my band, like forgetting the jams, but I have this problem of, and again, this is ego coming out, but I try to be literally like 3 chess moves ahead in the song.
That's the way your brain works.
I'm so far beyond overthinker, it's not even funny, and so I'm thinking about, okay, here's verse, I'm gonna cut out, and I'm thinking about my comps. Okay, now I'm gonna use my double stops, and and then this next one, and then we got the solo. I'm like, and so it frustrates me when other people don't do that, but that does lead to. In a way that leads to less fun, because I'm thinking about too much. And there's a lot of other people that just are able to have fun. But I'm wondering that when stuff is really, really good and you're laying on the pocket and everything is rolling hard because everybody's treading, I think that is still more fun. But I understand your guys, the people that have given the kind of general argument that you were giving, is that people like me don't understand that other people are just there for fun. Calm down, and so I will take that to heart and keep thinking about that.
Well, I've seen really lousy bands in other towns, small towns. I travel a lot, the United States, from one end to the other, and I'll drop in on a place I've never been before. They got live music, and I'll go in there and hear one of the worst bands I've ever heard, and the people are having so much fun. That's what it should be. These guys may be playing lousy, but they're having fun. That's what music should be. So, and I've been, playing at the Phoenix one time. I was having a conflict with one of the other band members that was just like, I was kind of like, and this other person was really upset about something. And I was just trying to get through the set and everything, and one of our patrons came up to me afterwards and says, "You guys need to, you can't be doing that on stage." Scolded me for it, and it really, I didn't feel like it was my, fault or what had happened, but
we're in the mood.
It wasn't anything I was doing. I was just trying to run the thing, but this other person was having a conflict, and she was pissed about it. They came in there to be entertained, and then they have to watch this band having a meltdown on the
and
stage.
ruin the audience's night.
You know, so good music is contagious. Everybody has a good time. You always have to do your best work on stage. There's just, it changes from one day to the next.
Yeah. So last question for you. God, this is like flew by. But last question for you. You were mentioning something about the young guys coming out, and this one of my old bandmates said something to me. He was like, we have to remember that like in the 70s we had freaks like Jimi Hendrix and stuff that were just absolutely insane, or Charlie Parker or whatever, But he was like, you have to understand that now we have like super freaks, that like, and these guys they're by the dozens, hundreds. And not even just not in Kansas City even necessarily, but in the world. I mean, there's people that are just absolutely insane. Yeah, children.
Okay, Rob.
Talk about you were talking about the people you were seeing at
the International Blues Competition.
IBC, yeah.
So, International Blues Competition, Max Berry and I won the Kansas City Challenge and went to Memphis in 09 and 10 and competed in the big contest down there. And we were watching this little girl named Shay, I think, who was from Kansas City in a youth band. And Shay could do the Johnny B. Good stuff. She was just super cute and really talented, and just looked like she was just born with a guitar in her hand. She was about 10 or something. It was crazy. But me and some other friends, while we were there, looked out at several of the other little youth bands that were coming in, and it was almost scary. It was I'm watching this little band from Germany. These kids are 14, and I walk into the club and I hear Cassie Taylor is sitting in with these guys. Cassie Taylor, Otis Taylor's daughter, who's a big deal guitar hero person. And I got in there and looked, and these little guys are just playing the shit out of Muddy Waters, and they're singing it, and it sounds like Muddy Waters, and they're from Germany, and all the German kids learned English, so they knew how to speak English. But I saw a little Japanese band. It was like the same kind of thing. You walk in, you hear it, it's like, God, this is a cool band. Who's playing? And it's like little bitty kids,
like 12-year-olds.
Yeah, from Japan. They can't even speak English, but they can sing Muddy Waters, and it sounds. This kid's got a baritone voice like that. So. When I saw that, I was like, "What is this? What?" And at about the same time, I started studying reincarnation. As a concept. They're all concepts. We don't really know what happens. I mean, and I can't profess to know, but this kind of made me think about reincarnation, that these kids who are, and you see all kinds of videos of little guitar player kids that are 8 years old that can just play like Jimi Hendrix. I mean, this is a thing that's happening now, and it brought me hope, because I feel like the new age of information and technology that we're experiencing now with kids and computers and phones, and their brains think differently, number one. Number two, though, these kids that I've seen play, these young children that they couldn't possibly be old enough to have learned that in their short lifetime. You can't learn that stuff. They're playing from their feeling. They were playing from their heart, from wherever. But I think I'm kind of hoping that it's evolution taking place in front of us very quickly. It might be reincarnation, but it might be evolution, or both. But to me, evolution gives me hope, because as a human species, we've really fucked things up. Pardon the French, but we've screwed things up to the point where our world is a mess now. The environment's a mess. Everything's a mess. And music has always saved the day, and music has always been a tool for revolution. In any revolutions that have occurred, music has been an active part of that. So I just think that these children musicians that are coming up are going to reteach us something that's important, and that is that the music and the joy of playing music is important. Pay attention. I don't know. It gives me hope for humanity that these children are learning so fast, or that they come with the knowledge already in them, in their DNA, from somewhere else, maybe, or just.
I think one of the things that I don't know See, one of the things that I remember my mom talking about is like she would try in her family band. She would try to get like songs off of the record. So her and her sister are sitting there, and they're oh no, go back. And so the one's sitting there writing lyrics, and the other one's like
picking the needle up and moving it back.
Oh no, you went too far, and they're sitting there forever doing that. Yeah. Well, now I can't comment on the reincarnation argument, but what I would say is that back in the 70s, again, you'd have to go buy a record, or you'd have to listen to it on the radio, or go to if they even came to your town. Yeah. Yeah. Well, now I can go listen to Jimi Hendrix in 2 seconds, and so I would make an argument that I think it's just one of the biggest reasons is technology has been one, and because everything is going so fast, people are picking up stuff so much faster. Kids are picking stuff up, but it's also kind of an evolutionary thing too, is that we didn't have to. Jimi Hendrix was like making stuff up on the fly. Well, we don't have to make Jimi Hendrix up because we've already heard him now. My generation, so that would be my explanation. Kind of not necessarily a spiritual thing, but that would be one example that I would think of. And this is also back to the state of music that we were talking about earlier. That it's frustrating when I go. It's funny because. Going out to like a blues jam, and I look around and I'm like, holy crap, there's like 40, 56-year-olds in here. And then me. So it's like, I'm bummed that more, but the jammers that come out, it ain't all 40-year-old jammers.
No,
it is definitely not.
In the last 10 years, there's been a new, guys in their 30s and right now are just tremendous musicians.
Definitely Bobby's doing a bunch of good stuff up at UMKC. There are some killer jazz guys that are 20,
I was in the program up there for a while, and during the time Steve Lambert, the saxophonist, was in school at the time, and they were playing his stuff in the concert that we did. They were playing his stuff, and it was just awesome. I was just amazed. And he's this little guy from Iowa that just kind of came to town, and all of a sudden, and Steve is just amazing.
Well, all those guys. There's a crew of them, of 20 or 40 of them that have come out in the last 10 years.
Exactly.
That are just, flying through Parker like 240 bebop crap, and they're just,
Well, when you take that musical genius and then combine it with the education that Bobby Watson and his crew can give them, it's just. I mean, you're creating monsters that you can't.
Right. And even Winfield Bluegrass Festival, when I go down there, I see the same thing that you were talking about. It's like these 10-year-olds, and they're just shredding up some bluegrass. Yeah. The fiddlers.
Playing banjo. I've seen some 12-year-old banjo players down there.
So that's great.
There was a little girl, 12-year-old banjo player, and I think she was like Asian. Yeah. And it's just like... Her parents brought her down there because she could play banjo. They weren't musicians, and this little girl was just, oh my God, but anyway, to that note, I'm encouraged by it. I'm encouraged by the younger cats than me that are really hitting this hard, touring. Adam Hagerman, the drummer, has toured with everybody, and Adam is just. Jan Faircloth, the drummer. There are all, Brandon, husband, Levittown, all these guys are really falling into this touring bit, and they've just turned into killer players. And I'm just so glad that that's what's following me. Yeah. Is some really good musicians and really good music for Kansas City. It's just thrilling.
Even in the blues scene, I mean, Samantha and Amanda are doing good, definitely the Trampled Underfoot guys are doing well, Brandon and them, definitely the old number 5 guys, Derek and Brock and them, there's a handful of us that are 30-ish, and that are trying to...
Putting out high quality, great music that's fun to listen to and easy to dance to and everything else. It is a golden age of music in Kansas City right now.
And that are respectful of the older music, too. I think that's another thing that kind of sort of would surprise maybe some older people going to, you know, those kids today, that kind of crap, you know, that, but I don't know. I think there's a lot of blues players and all these young jazz guys, they're very aware of Coleman Hawkins and Charlie Parker and all these old names and aware of their general story and know the tunes and are, you know, respectful of the past. And I think that's really cool.
I've had several conversations with people in the 40s, 30s, 40s generations, and most of them have a story about their dad's record collection or their mom's record collection. This is what I grew up with, Chubby Carrier or Chubby Checker, and that's, you know, that's what I learned at first, and that's led me to this and this and this. But Brandon Hudspeth, his dad was a music collector, and Brandon was blessed to have a father who, you know, taught him really good music. You just let him play the records, and the kids, they gravitate to what they like. My brothers and sisters had B.B. King in their record collections when I was a kid. You know, Bob Dylan, the whole.
My parents had one, you know, basically 101 the Fox Blair in my whole childhood, even though I felt like I grew up with Zeppelin and all these people, Eagles, you know, so not the jazz stuff, but all the classic rock stuff. I know all those songs. They were blaring it, and it
was the songs I grew up with, and you grew up with them too by listening to that station.
I feel like I grew up with, you know, I feel similar to that.
They were oldies by then.
Yeah.
You know, like
but anyway, so well, I'm glad that you're, you know, that makes me feel good too, because as a young guy, that's what I always hear from the older generation is, you know, you know, in many different areas, especially in you know, our world today, these kids today kind of stuff, and I, you know, try to, you know, agree with them on some points of that, but disagree on others, you know, that there's some other points like you just made about, you know, well, but in music, the people playing there, I agree with you that I think there is a pretty respect for the past in the music scene with all of us young guys.
And in general, jam sessions in Kansas City, back to that topic, I've seen some just really amazing jams here in Kansas City. Bands from different, or members from different bands come together. I mean, I get to sit in with Chris Schneblin sometimes, and he's just an awesome blues drummer. And I never have to worry about Chris. I mean, I know he's going to play what I need to. And I get to see Chris play with other people, and the bassists in Kansas City, there's just so many of them that are just so good. And so it's just such a treat for me to watch that jam thing and to respect and revere these people, because it's the future of music, and I'm just so thrilled to be at it and still all this time. And I'm not playing in a band right now at all. I'm just I'm just lucky to be doing my solo thing and just enjoying. I get to go out and play with people all the time because I live in Kansas City. There's jams all over the place, so it's fun. You know, I love getting on the bass in front of a band that knows what they're doing, because it's just, that's a religious experience for me. I walk off stage feeling different after being able to do that. It's a therapy for me.
Yeah, that's cool, man.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. There you go. This has been Mark Montgomery, man.
Yeah. If I can give a couple of minutes to what I'm doing now.
Yeah, do it.
I just started my own record label about a year and a half ago, Love Honey Records, and I put my latest CD, which is called Difficult Man, on this. And Difficult Man is a pretty complicated kind of jazz song in the middle of a bunch of blues, but it's just a humorous look at men, you know, ourselves, you know, like kind of, you know, let's all have fun with it. But so I released that about a year ago, did a soft release, and I'm still maybe thinking about shopping for a record label in Memphis. But I won the International Blues Competition this year here in Kansas City, so I'm going to Memphis to perform my show in January. And until then, we'll be doing some benefits. I think we've got one at Llewellyn's next weekend, and with Heather Newman and her band, and then we're going to do another one the 26th of December at Knucklehead. So, you know, that stuff is up and going right now, and I'm just so excited to be representing Kansas City and the Blues Society, who has done wonderful things for me this year. I have to commend Lowell Burris and the whole Blues Society. has just been so gracious to me and treated me with such respect and love. And I just, my hat's off to them, and my hat's off to all the people who support live music in Kansas City. Thank you. So,
yeah,
anyway,
I second that. This is Mark Montgomery. Come check him out and playing around Kansas City, doing all sorts of stuff. But thanks for coming, man.
And this is Rob Foster, musician and grumpy old guy at large. I love you, Rob.
Snob? You forgot snob?
No, I think it's just the fact that you know music, you've studied it, and you just can't expect everybody to know what you know, because you're smarter than almost all of them.
Well,
I just wanted to tell you that.
But that's probably right. Get out of here. We'll see you next time. See ya.
Bye.